Hi, my sisters. I see Davina is here and Janice is here. Oh, that's Janet. Hi, Janet. Thanks for joining us. Wow. We'll give it a couple minutes. A few people might check in still. So I'm excited. Tonight is already the fifth class in our series. And I only have one more next week, and then we're going to change the series theme. Oh, yeah. I couldn't find my glasses. There they were. Yay. Just waiting here. I saw about 6 people had said they were going to join us, so we'll just give them a couple minutes. Did you guys have really strong winds today too, Davine and Janet, where you are? No? I am streaming, right? Can you see me? Can you hear me? I see the happy faces in the chat room. Let me put something there. Let's see. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I see it. I see it. Yeah, it was super windy here too. Really windy. So windy that I was standing at the kitchen stovetop, and we have a door right by the stove, and the wind blew so hard I thought the door was gonna fly open while I was standing there, and I was frying tortilla shells for crispy tacos. So yeah, that scared me. Hi, Davine. Thank you. Thank you for answering me. So I don't know how many are joining. It said 6 people earlier, kind of like checked yes, they're gonna come. But I know one of them is gonna check it out after because I think she's working. And the others usually check in as we start. So like Grace will usually tune in. Janet Nelson said she'll be tuning in as well. And Santana usually does. So we'll see. We'll see. But I know one of my friends, my new friends who I've been reaching out to, also liked my event. And she's in Virginia too. And she was going to come to our Women's Day event, but then we had to cancel it. So, yes. Oh, you had Chipotle. Come on. It's Tuesday, Taco Tuesday. So you got to go with the theme, right? I love themes. Okay. I don't want to start too soon, but I don't want to start too late. We're 3 minutes in already. I'm watching the little live thing. I found out I could play music, but I tried to practice earlier today, and it let me play, but it wouldn't let me stop the music. So I didn't want to take a chance and try to play any music from YouTube. YouTube has free music downloads that they allow you to use on any of your videos. And I found a couple of really cool instrumentals that I really wanted to share. But if I don't, I got to practice. If I can't turn it off, you might be stuck listening to the music the whole time and not hearing anything I say. Wow. I was just thinking, we did 5 weeks. This is our 5th week. And I was trying to remember all the ladies we covered. Let me see. Week 1, we covered the woman at the well. That's up for replay. If you ever want to watch it or share it, it's there. And I changed the picture, and you can see a very modern looking woman at the well with Jesus behind her. And the second week, I believe we did the widow who was already a widow, and then her son died. So we don't know her name. We don't know any of these really powerful. It's one of my favorite stories, actually. And then last week, we did the woman. I don't know how to describe her, so I always say the woman and the dogs, because her story, Jesus uses the dogs as an example, and she counters. Hi, Julia. Welcome. Yeah, so that's 4 of the women. Tonight, we're doing another really famous woman, and hopefully no brothers will tune in. First week, we had a couple brothers, because this one will make some of them uncomfortable. And then the last one that we'll do. In my book here, we actually have two more women, but one of them, it's kind of hard for me to um, do that study. So I'm going to ask probably some of you later on the side if you think we should go ahead and do her. Hi, Uloma. Welcome. I love that. Okay. So we're now about 5 minutes in, so maybe we should go ahead and get started. Okay? Let's do that. Why don't we start with a prayer, and then we'll jump right in. Okay? I wish I could ask one of you to pray, but you'd have to type it out and I'd have to read it. I'll just pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much, God, for this amazing evening, Father, with the strong, powerful winds outside, the reminder, God, that you are in control. Father, thank you so much for the springtime that is on us and the flowers everywhere, God. The birds are singing bright and early in the morning. They are my alarm clock, God. Thank you so much for them. Thank you for all these women, these very special women who take the time to study your word, God. Take the time to be together even during this time of crisis, God, especially during this time of crisis, actually, God. I thank you for them, God. Thank you for each one and her story, Father. I thank you for their perseverance and their faith. Father, I thank you for the way that so many women showed me their love too this weekend. I just can't believe, Father, the showering of love that I got to receive right here in front of my house with all those cars that drove by, all the sisters inside of them, and brothers and friends, God honking their horns and sharing their banners and their gifts, and how amazing that was, God. I thank you so much for friendships that we have as believers, God. I pray that many people will see that video and will recognize, God. They will know that we are true believers, that we are true disciples because of our love for one another, God, and our love for you. Be with us tonight, God. Grant us all deeper understanding of your word. Help us to draw nearer to you and nearer to each other, God. We love you so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Yeah, that was my daughter holding our dog Penny, who was scratching on the door, and but they're gonna go back downstairs and eat some tacos. Okay, so let me just remind you, I don't want to forget. Denise, welcome. I'm so happy, Denise. You came on that parade too, and I couldn't believe it. Your face was covered except for your eyes. I couldn't even see your eyes hardly. That's why I was like, Denise, is that you? But Denise was the sister who was going to help me have my party. And we were going to use her clubhouse at her apartment complex. And, I knew by April 1st that we probably weren't going to have any party. But I did not want to say I cancel my party. So I didn't say anything. I just waited. But Denise, you're so awesome. I'm so glad you're joining us too. So we have Davine and Janet and Uloma and Julia and Denise all with us right now. We'll probably have Dr. Janet week 5 already. Thank you for tuning in again. And yes, and obviously, every single week, the goal is to help us to remember that the Bible is truly the greatest story ever told, better than any story out there, but also to remind us that each of our own stories are very powerful, and we need to tell our story. We need to tell our story, how life has taken us on these different turns, and how we came to a point of really, truly believing in God, really and truly trusting Him, and using His word for our lives. And there was a point of conversion, and we need to share it. So tonight's story is about a woman who is very desperate to find a cure. She had a chronic illness, and her illness involved lots of changing of her clothes, lots of doubling up on her homemade maxi pads, and she tried everything. She tried everything. She tried everything, saw many doctors. She spent all her money trying to get better. And yet her condition did not show any improvement after 12 years. In fact, it got worse. So she was desperate. She was a desperate woman seeking help. and not having any answers. Any females out there that might relate to a difficult period at least? That's why I thought no brothers want to tune in tonight. But what wouldn't we do when we have a difficult period, like our menstruation? I know a friend growing up in high school, she was intensely in pain every month. She would curl up on her bed and stay there for days, just in so much pain. And she was excused to stay home from school during those days by her doctor. And I remember back then, I used to be jealous that she could miss school and it was legitimate days home. That she didn't get in trouble for it, didn't get any points knocked off, and didn't really get counted absent for those days either. They were called excused absences. But now looking back as a grown woman, I never had symptoms growing up. So that's partly why I was jealous. I never had symptoms. I never cramped. I never craved things. I just did not have any symptoms. But now that I'm 50, for the last couple years anyway, probably the last 5 years, I have had symptoms. And I can always tell when I ovulate because there's a super big pain where I think my ovaries are, and it hurts. And I can tell that after that is usually a couple weeks before I start, or a week maybe. I'm not even sure, but I know, okay, now I got to start watching out. It's irregular now, so I don't know, and I can be insecure. So I started carrying things in my purse just in case. And I take lots of ibuprofen during that time. I even learned I can alternate with Tylenol because my back aches so bad during my period, and I get nauseous. I don't want to eat very much. I do crave junk food actually, which is very bad because it affects my skin. I get oily blemishes, and so anyway, I can't relate to this woman who had a period for 12 years. Hers never lightened up. She never got to go from heavy to light for 12 years. So I can't relate to that, but I have a glimpse of how difficult it can be for me just after a few days of struggling. And I know all of us women, we can relate in some shape or form to what it feels like to have an awful menstruation. Dr. Janet, thanks for joining us. So, so let's go on. Let's consider that there are women out there who suffer, and in this case, we're talking about the suffering that comes from bleeding. Her condition would have been called today hemorrhaging, and even today, the solution, the cure for a woman who hemorrhages or has horrible periods, it usually has to do with removal of her reproductive organs, specifically a hysterectomy or a partial hysterectomy. And it's not anything to laugh about. It's serious, very serious. So the context of our story tonight, there's three times where this story is talked about. Matthew chapter 9, and you can write this down. Matthew 9, verse 20 to 22. That's the first gospel that we read about the same woman. And then we read about her again in Mark, and that's the one we're going to focus on. But then also again in Luke chapter 8. Dr. Luke, of course, wasn't going to miss this one. He put it down in chapter 8, verse 43 to 48. In fact, Dr. Luke is the one who says his words are that no doctor could help her. He says that. So I thought that was really interesting that Dr. Luke wouldn't say it like that. But our context will be Mark chapter 5, verse 24 to 34. So let's go ahead and go there now. Mark chapter 5, verse 24 to 34. Oh, Kia's with us. Come on, Kia. Okay. This is an interesting passage that comes up these three times, and each time it says it almost exactly the same, but Mark gives the most detail. And so that's why we're going to read from Mark. Chapter 5, verse 24, and I'll say 24b because 24 starts off, but we're going to read the second part, the next paragraph, okay? Mark 5:24b. It says, a large crowd followed and pressed around him being Jesus. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and he asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." I read that story and my heart just goes out to her. She's trembling with fear when he realizes that power went out from him. But I also think about how this today is happening right now. We have frontline workers, we have medical workers, especially, and food suppliers, especially. These are essentials, medical and food, essential. Lots of other essential needs are out there too. Sanitation. Thank goodness our trash is still getting picked up every week, right? Other necessities too are out there, but medical and food are the top priorities right now. And I'm sure that those who are working in these industries, they are seeing people coming in desperate and urgent. And I mean, this COVID-19 has people stocking up on things and not sharing. Some neighborhoods are beginning to put it out there, that we need to share. There's posters in my neighborhood right now that's saying that our ward, our area of DC, we need to all be taking care of our neighbors. It says it's our duty. I wish they would use scripture because scripturally that's true. But they're actually posted at every few power poles. There's a poster posted up there for our neighborhood to remember we're supposed to help each other, be neighbors to each other, and help each other if we're in need. So I love that. Yeah, me too, Davine. So but yeah, people can get real mean and harsh and rude when they're desperate. But not in the case of this woman, though. It's very beautiful how she handled things. So let's think of the context of this story. First of all, we know again, it's the author is John Mark, also known as Mark the Evangelist, and also well known as Barnabas's nephew and Paul's companion. So he became companion and then he blew it and then he became his companion again later. And in the later years, Paul told him everything and he wrote everything down that Paul told him. He also, of course, heard stories from Peter and the other apostles. So there are times where it's suggested that Peter may have told him this story, but Paul heard everything and relayed everything, and John Mark wrote it all down. And the purpose of Mark, as we shared last week, the main purpose for Mark being written was to encourage Christians, to encourage believers to persevere. And I thought that was perfect for this story because this poor woman has persevered for 12 years of suffering already. And then this story happens during Jesus's second year. So he's about 31 years old. And often the second year is referred to as the year of popularity. Obviously, you can imagine he did so many miracles up until now. He cast out demons. He healed many, many, many sick people were healed. He calmed storms, and he told so many stories, great, fascinating, amazing stories, what we call parables, right? And they were blown away by Jesus. This was his year of popularity. Welcome, Grace. Good to have you. And okay, and then just to consider also the location, Jesus had just left the eastern shore of Galilee, and he had come on to the other side, the western shore, and now was entering of the same lake, was entering Capernaum. So I know the Sea of Galilee, it should be a gigantic water, right? But I don't. and when you read the history, it does call it a lake sometimes. So I would need to do a little more research to understand why that is. But it does say Sea of Galilee on the eastern side, and he traveled to the western side, and it says of the lake. This is in my archaeological study Bible, and it's also when I look it up on Google, when I start searching things in the Bible options out there. There's so many of them. They say this. They still say the same language. So, but either way, he's probably at Capernaum at this point. He's left the Sea of Galilee, and he's most likely at Capernaum on the western side now. And then just to consider another little interesting fact, it's in all three cases, in Matthew, in Luke, and in this case in Mark. This story of this bleeding woman happens in the middle of another story. The other story, which we didn't read, but please, by all means, study that out, because it's another person with no name. The name of the person we do know is Jairus, or Jairus. I'm not sure how you say it. He was a synagogue ruler, and his daughter, who we don't know her name, 12 years old daughter, was dying. So it's right in the middle of him coming and throwing himself at Jesus and begging Jesus to come and heal his dying daughter. And that's when this woman comes in and kind of interrupts Jesus's trek, his journey from when he landed at Capernaum on the shore there to Jairus's home. So, okay. So, and then the bleeding woman herself, the other main character. Let's see. Well, we know she has no name. Nobody knows her name. And why would she? Right? She's an outcast. She's considered unclean. And she was labeled, her label in her day was undesirable, untouchable. This is a way that they describe people like her. People with leprosy were described the same way. She was probably anemic from all that blood loss, which probably for 12 years of being anemic, probably was very pale, and even kind of like ashen, kind of like a grayness is taking over. She was alone, no friends or support, because she was outcast. And yet, through all this, consider that she was not hopeless. She was not hopeless. She heard about Jesus, and she had hope that maybe he could heal her. So, and who's there? Yay. Okay. Let's see. Uloma's asking, what does desperation bring out of us? You're right. Either it can bring out our worst or our best. That's so true. We can freak out and cave into the emotion, and that's exactly what I was referring to with this woman. And in our days today, people are right now during this crisis, this pandemic, some are freaking out and getting mean and angry, and they're hoarding toilet paper. I was at Walmart, and I was there for toilet paper, and I called first to make sure they still had some. And I got there, and right in front of me, a young man, he's pushing his cart, and in his cart, 2 giant mega packs of toilet paper. And I was like, oh, good, there's more left. I'm in the same aisle as the toilet paper. He's passing me and exiting. I'm passing him, entering the same aisle. And then as soon as he passes, I look, there's no more toilet paper. He took the last 2. And he saw me, and I was in my sweats, and I definitely looked like an older woman, and he did not offer me any help. And I was blown away. I'm like, wow, he didn't even offer help. He didn't offer to share. And so I went to the storefront and asked if there's any more, and they said, no, whatever's there, that's what we got. So anyway, people can be mean, and during these crises times, they can either respond with an attitude of how can I help, and we're in this together, or they can respond with an attitude of I'm all for me only, me, myself, and I, and that case is so awful. Mama Cheryl is listening in. How is she listening in? Interesting. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Welcome. Okay, great. Thanks for we got the main characters, we got the context, including the author. We know where they are now. Um, and now we go into the conflict. So, number one, again, what's Jesus doing? Talking to another woman. Not only a woman, he turns around and talks to her. She's an unclean woman. Unclean. And because he's a rabbi and she touched him, he, according to Jewish tradition, has now become, in their eyes, ceremonially unclean too, because an unclean woman touched him. And another conflict that's happening, the leader, Jairus, the synagogue ruler, he's waiting for Jesus. He just left his post, came running to find Jesus, begged him to come save his daughter. His daughter is dying. And so this is a conflict. And he's waiting for Jesus. And this woman knows, she already knows that she's getting in the way if she says anything to Jesus. This is what she could have thought. And I want us to realize this too. I could have thought this if I was in her shoes. You probably could, a lot of you, but she could have thought Jesus was too busy helping more important people, like that synagogue ruler. Who am I to go and talk to him or reach out to him or try to get help from him? I'm nobody. She could have thought that way. But we see that she overcame whatever negative thinking she might have had going into it. After 12 years of suffering and being outcast, she must have struggled with her self-esteem, her image. She must have had some shame. This is a lot of stuff she had to be going through. But if we're desperate women, we will do desperate things. Desperate times, that saying goes, calls for desperate measures. So she was willing. This was another conflict. Jesus had to push through the crowd. So Jairus summons him, please, Jesus, come help me. My daughter is dying. Please come and heal her. You can heal her with your touch. He emphasizes that if you touch her, I know she'll be healed. So, but the conflict of the crowd, this is not an easy situation. And a little further history on Capernaum, their streets were not built for crowds like this. But Jesus, in his popular year, really elicited a huge crowd. People knew he was coming, heard he was coming. So they started gathering and filling up the streets. And in the Greek, the word that they used here for the crowd, this description of the crowd he was in, I probably am saying this wrong, but sumpnigo, sumpnigo. That's the Greek. And that word is a hyperbole for, it's an expression, a hyperbolic expression for crushed. So it's like the crowd was so thick. And the other phrase that's used in the other passages is pressing. The crowd was pressing in. And so the crowd was crushing. It was literally, pushing, elbowing his way through to get from the beach landing dock all the way to the synagogue. And in the middle of this crowd, this woman, she pushed through in her weak state, in her suffering, in her bleeding. She pushed through to just touch his robe. And yes, Uloma, again, Jesus breaking customary social practices of that day by interacting with people that society had labeled as outcasts. Yes, that's his reputation. And Tanisha has joined us. Hi, Tanisha. Thank you. I love your thing, TKJ. I don't know what K is, though. One day you have to tell me. So, okay. And I wanted to tell you another little, interesting fact. That same word, that Greek word for the crowd that is used in this passage is the same Greek word used in the parable of the soils. Remember that parable? This one is about, this word for crowd is the same word that's used in the parable of soils for choking. So suffocating, right? And it's when the thorns choke out the weeds. The wheat, not the weeds. That would be good. No, they choke out the wheat so that the wheat became unfruitful. So this is the description that they're using there. Yeah. And another conflict, um, the woman herself. I mean, I hate to say it, but her appearance was a conflict. She was visibly sick. So people in this crowd probably, um, I'm guessing, probably pushed her away. Or I don't know how they could push her. They can't touch her. So I'm trying to imagine maybe they made way for her because she was sickly, you know, sickly. And probably another thing, we know this, ladies, we know this full well. When it is our period, when it's time for our menstruation, we have to take extra time to be clean, right? We got to take extra time so that we don't smell. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's that particular smell, there's nothing else like it. We know that smell when we smell it, right? And this poor woman, she probably had an odor about her on top of everything else. So um, she's been 12 years on her period. 12 years. Let's see. Tanisha. Kayla Rose? Tanisha Kayla Rose, that's your name? Wow, that's beautiful, T. I like that. Thanks, Davy. And you'll have to tell me how to pronounce the Greek word later. I mean, I know you know Hebrew. I imagine it's not too far off from Greek, right? Um, okay. So there's another thing to help us understand about this unclean state of this woman. I want to read for you from Leviticus, the Old Testament. Boy, us women, we had it hard in the old days. So many stereotypes and prejudices against us women. But look at Leviticus chapter 15, and right there in verse 25, and I'll just read it for us. Leviticus 15, verse 25. It says, when a woman has a discharge of her blood for many days at a time, other than her menstrual period, or if it continues beyond her period, she will be unclean all the days of her unclean discharge, just as she is during the days of her menstruation. Isn't that just crazy? Let's see, just to clarify. Yes, thank you, Yulama. I figured you meant that about the soils. Um, okay, so Leviticus 15:25, it's describing to us, Leviticus is where the laws are, a lot of the Levitical laws. And they're letting us know that a woman is literally considered unclean when she is giving a discharge of blood. Thank you, Davy. And according to the same traditions that are out there were out there, I don't know about today, but the woman would have to stop bleeding for 7 days before she's even regarded as clean again. So this poor woman fell into that category. Her discharge never stopped. So she was never declared clean for 12 years. So I just wanted to give you that little extra. Oops, now I lost my notes. Okay, and then another little insight too about all the help she tried to get. I want to share with you from my little archaeological Bible on page 1674 because it's a huge Bible. So Davine's sharing with us some Orthodox Jews still follow these laws for purity. I mean, honestly, it does make sense because it's blood, you know. In a health facility, we have to glove up and wear protective gear if we have to deal with any blood. So it would make sense that this kind of, seems like it's unclean. And yet, we have so many things we can use these days to stay cleaner during that time, you know. It's so hard for me It seems so not fair, doesn't it, that we're women and we got to go through this, and yet it's all part of the plan. That if you ever do, if you're not married already, and if you ever do get married, and if you are married and you will one day have children, want to one day have children, then this is the purpose, of our reproductive system. And so it's very, God is amazing. He figured some stuff out way before we could ever comprehend. But I'm going to share with you what they describe for us in this archaeological Bible as the practices of the doctors of of that age. Um, it's called Cultural and Historical Notes. And this one's subtitle is Disease and Medicine in the Ancient World. And according to this one is referring to Luke the doctor is actually one of the ones they're referring to when they read this, when they share it. It says, ancient doctors were few in number. They were very expensive, and they were lacking in knowledge of effective treatments. And although they were learned for their time, they were still quite ignorant and superstitious. So the superstition, that comes in a lot of cultures. A lot of superstitions are out there. I mean, my culture alone, my Native American culture, we were raised with all kinds of fears. One of the ones was about spiders. I was not allowed to kill spiders growing up because the spiders were considered sacred. But imagine a spider bite. I've been bit by a spider before, and I could never understand why we wouldn't get rid of the spiders in the house. Why would we have to let them live with us? Why can't they live outside? Because the spider bites hurt really bad. And in the desert, there's some deathly spiders out there, the brown recluse being one of them. And it's a horrible, horrible, painful bite. And you need you need to go to the hospital if you get one. You may not survive. So anyway, I never understood that, but it was a superstition. We could not kill spiders. If we did, we risked being cursed. And a lot of illness was assumed to be a result of curse, even in my culture growing up. And that's in this 20th century, last century. So anyway, okay. And then a common healing method was incubation, whereby the sick person would sleep in the confines of the temple in the hope of receiving a dream revelation from the god, this being the god Asclepius. And those who had been healed made special contributions to the temple, which often included plaster reproductions of whatever parts of their body had been healed. So this could explain why sometimes the body part or the little statues that you see are actual body parts, because somebody was healed in that body part and they made a little statue for it. But also, there were times when someone might fall ill and they endure brutal surgeries at the hands of the Roman doctors in particular. And the cures sometimes prescribed might include bathing in the river during the winter, pouring mud on yourself before sitting outside outside of the temple yard. Another prescription was walking around with no shoes on all winter long. And one we may have heard about from other cultures too, bloodletting from various parts of the body. So, getting a leech is one of the ways they would do that. It was so awful. But this is a nice fact. Hi, Monet, welcome. So glad you're with us. And then another interesting fact. Unlike the doctors of his day, Jesus healed without charge. He did not follow any specific ritual that might have been regarded as the key to this magic. So his healing power, he always accredited to God. So Jesus was revolutionary, but he was also willing to stand up and give credit to God and do whatever he could to make sure the people did not think this was just magic. He's not a magician. He's Jesus, the Son of God. So, okay. Extreme measures they went to, right? Especially that bloodletting. I can't. Ugh, so gross. But what about us today? What will we do? What are our extreme measures today? And I always try to relate to today because our world today is just as messed up as they were back then. We may not have all the same superstitions, but we have our own way of handling things that is not beneficial or productive. For example, how many women right now at this very hour, the sun has gone down now, and they already spent the day at home. They did whatever they could outside. Maybe they're a mom with children. They did what they could with the kids, but we're stuck. A lot of us, most of us. And so now what? If the kids are young, they're getting ready for bed, and what is mom doing? Is mom grabbing a cigarette and chilling outside because it helps her to relax? Is she having wine or harder liquor? I was telling Lujak the other day, I wonder if this is why the scriptures tell us when we're older that older women should not be given to drinking much wine. It's in Titus. And I was telling him because when we're older, in that day especially, and they don't have the same kind of workload, and the kids, all they do is help with the kids at the home, or they're physically handicapped because of age, crippling arthritis or whatever. Is wine like their only pleasure back then? Is that why it says that? I don't know, but I did start to wonder because it's definitely easy to go there. One of the deliveries that's available is wine. So I'm being honest and open. It's very easy to fall into that category, and to begin to have extra glass of wine instead of staying pure and righteous and doing things that are beneficial to deal with the stress and to have peace, but yeah, I think about that. Was yesterday was 420. Do you ladies know what that means? 420. What is 420 day? I bet Monet knows because all the young people know. I'm going to wait for someone to answer me. Does anyone know what the 420 day is? That was yesterday. Right? Today the 22nd or 21st? Yeah, yesterday was 420. Nobody knows? Monet, I thought you would know. Not sure, not sure. Yes, come on, Tanisha, you know about it. It's the day they legalized marijuana. And so now it's become the 420 is like a day that represents. Yes, it's kind of dedicated to smoking weed, Elizabeth said. Yep, that's right. So that's what yesterday was. And I tell you what, I could smell it. There were people out there. They were smoking that stuff. And that's my past, I used to use that daily with my best friend next door. We'd come home after school. We'd put on music. Our parents were all at work. And we would just get high. We get high almost every day. Well, when it was not season, I ran cross country the first part of the school year. I ran track the second part of the school year. So it was in between seasons that we would do that every day. And of course, summertime too, we had a lot. So yeah, it's people are turning to things that are not necessarily healthy or beneficial, but they're there. And it's one way to handle the stress of life right now. It's not good, but it is one way to handle. Even some people, turn to other things like honestly watching a lot of movies. I know some people are Netflixing. I was talking to one of my friends. She watched, I think, like 7 episodes of something on, I don't know, Netflix or something. I was like, wow, how many hours was that? And she told me it was something like 5 hours. And I'm like, how did you watch Netflix for 5 hours? Didn't you get bored? Didn't you feel like you need to get up out of your couch or out of your bed? And she's like, well, yeah, but it was just one night. I just didn't want to do anything else. And I felt bad because I know with me, I mean, I might watch a movie, but I'm not going to watch 5 hours worth. And I got too much to do. I have to, Davine, I did my to-do list. Remember we talked about in the first class? I have now hemmed 2 of Lou Jack's pants, and I sewed Philip's pockets inside of his sweats. He had 2 pairs of sweats like that. I sewed the pockets. They were they were slipping his coins out. So, and I started to sew my dress hem. I have a dress that I needed to hem too. So I felt productive, and then I got a little bit of gardening done, a little bit. I wish I got more, but anyway, my checklist is starting to get checked off. And those are productive things. What are other productive things we can do? We could definitely be talking to other women that we know, and reach out to other women. We could take something like these classes and share them with other women and discuss them. We can do what Matt Sullivan did. Actually, I was very surprised when I listened to his sermon, but he just decided to hop in his car and take a gift to the different disciples in his ministry that, at this point we haven't seen each other for the most part for about a month, maybe a little more than that. And so he just took a gift, kept his gloves on and his mask, but he delivered burgers and drinks to the brothers' household. He stopped by at the Greens home. I think they're both healthcare workers, and so he knew that the stress level they have is very high, and so he took them a gift. And he went and saw a recently married couple right before the virus. They got married. He went and stopped to see how their newlywed life is going. It was very, very awesome. We can do stuff like that. And that parade, that birthday parade, I really felt like it showed us another way that we can overcome during this quarantine. It's not breaking the rules to get in your car and take something to someone that encourages them. It's not bad. It's good. So I'm just saying there's definitely things we can do. So, okay. Extreme measures. What was the solution during all this, though? How did this all work out? We just read this amazing story. Let me get my Bible back open again. And I'm going to look at verse 28. The first thing is verse 28. Because she thought. The first thing was this woman's thinking. She thought, if I just touch his clothes. So this woman, she didn't go in with this attitude of I deserve this. She didn't go in with this harshness, this anger, this fix me now, demanding his attention. No, she just reasoned in her mind, and she thought, if I touch his clothes, if I just touch his clothes. And this may be if you read it more, if you read through other stories in the Bible, this actually did happen before and after, that people could get healed from Jesus by just touching his clothes. It wasn't the first time, wasn't the last time, but she believed these stories that she heard about Jesus. And to me, I think that this alone, the fact she thought that, I feel like that was a miracle all by itself. That even though she had suffered for 12 years and nothing worked, that she still had faith. She had faith. She had hope. That's why at the beginning I said all those things about her, but that she was not hopeless because she hoped in Jesus. And so her body was so weak. Her appearance was probably so frail and weak, but her faith was strong. And then second, I just have to say, it says right here that when in verse 27, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him. So she didn't confront him. She came up behind him. And it's almost as if in my mind, she was being humble. She was humbly sneaking up behind him, trusting that his power could heal her if she could just touch him. And rather than disturb him and upset Jairus, the synagogue ruler, who was so desperate for his daughter to be healed, rather than disrupt that stop him in his tracks, she snuck up behind him just to catch his garment just in time. And so that was the second part. The third part I wanted to notice is that Jesus granted her request. He granted her request. And if you look at that verse there, let's see, verse 34, he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." So first of all, Jesus called her daughter. The healing power of our words that we choose is so strong. We can call each other good names, and we can love up on each other and have mercy on each other, or we can call each other bad names to our faces or behind our backs. Jesus said to her face, "Daughter," and she did disrupt his journey. He did stop in his tracks. He ended up turning around and not giving up. It says there, Jesus, verse 32, but Jesus kept looking around to see who had done this. He didn't give up. He felt the power go out from him. He wanted to know who took some of his power. And he says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." So again, he's emphasizing not magic. He emphasized her faith in him being Jesus, the Savior. And because of that, she was freed not only from her suffering physically, but she became free from her suffering in every other way too. Because now she won't have to be an untouchable and undesirable and outcast. She will be welcomed back into society. Yes, thank you, Davine. She did not have a sense of entitlement at all. She was humble. Yes, and Uloma, the only thing that matters is hope expressing itself in love. Another version says faith expressing itself in love. That's right. And you guys, Jesus is on his way to his next miracle. Again, this is another thing that he seems to happen. It happens a lot in these stories. He's on his way to do something and he gets interrupted. How do you react when someone interrupts your plan? I just have to say, because I know I have my plan and I like to stick to it. But he kept his head. He did not lose his cool. And he calmly looked around till he saw who it was. And then afterward, he went on his way to not just heal Jairus's daughter, but turns out because he maybe took a little too long to get there, he had to raise her from the dead. So another case of Jesus raising someone from the dead. And even bigger miracle than it might have been if she hadn't interrupted his journey. So what counsel can we take from this? Let's see. Ooh, we're almost out of time. Well, I mentioned this last week. Okay, I want to say it again. One thing we have to remember, God is not like a genie in a bottle. He is not there to just, answer our prayers just like that. The purpose that we have to remember of our suffering, it's to make us better. And I wanted to point out Isaiah 53, verse 4. Let's see. I think I marked it in my Bible. Be faster. Isaiah 53, verse 4. Come on. There it is. Yes. Okay. It says, surely he took up our infirmities and he carried our sorrows. And verse 5, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. I wanted to refer to that because as bad as our suffering is, one thing we should try to keep in mind is that Jesus suffered for us. He suffered for us. He took up our infirmities. In these days of his life on earth, he healed so many infirmities, literally. He carried our sorrows. His heart, it says, we say this a lot. We say broken, our hearts can be broken, but Jesus's heart was literally crushed. When you study out the cross, his heart was literally crushed for us, and it says that by his wounds we are healed. So the wounds that he took, the stripes on his back, the nails in his wrists and in his feet, the crown that poked into his scalp, the wounds that he took, the spear that was pierced through his ribs and up to his heart, it was all so that we could be saved. And if you really think about it, he didn't have to go through any of that. He could have said to God, I don't want to do it anymore. I've changed my mind. No, these people are not worth it. They're all evil all the time. They're not going to change. He could have just gone back to heaven. We know that because he says, do you not know I could call 10,000 angels and they would be at my disposal? But he didn't call them. And that always gets me. Like Jesus stuck it out as hard as it was for no purpose of his own. It was all for us. And we need to try our best to be more like Jesus, to be willing to suffer the things that happen in our lives in a way that is righteous and learn from it, whatever we can learn, be better from it. And then to consider one more thing, too, that your faith, my sisters, can heal you too. If you believe, you also can be healed, even of the things you think you can't be healed from. And I want to refer to John chapter 6, verse 29. It's one of my scriptures I highlight in every new Bible I get. I go to it right away. It says, "The work of God is this, to believe in the one whom he has sent." And that is true. It is hard to believe. There are many, many things that can make us feel like, it's hopeless. There are many things we go through that can make us believe that God's not with us or doesn't care or isn't paying attention to us. And let's see, Tanisha saying Jesus suffered for us so we can have hope. That's right. And we can have faith to overcome our struggles and be saved. And also that we as disciples do the same. So those with less hope can encourage others to overcome and be saved. That's right. That's exactly right, Tanisha. Thank you for sharing that. So I can't believe it. We have to close out. But just a reminder, whether you're going through good times right now, you're enjoying this time with your families, and you found ways to be productive, and you actually feel great right now, or you're going through really hard times right now, and you've lost somebody you love, or a few people you love, or it's just driving you crazy being at home. I know that that can be the case, for some of us, to go stir crazy, have cabin fever, being stuck at home. And or maybe you're tempted to just fear so much to step outside and just be afraid because you don't want to catch this virus. So whether or not you're going through these good times or these bad times, I just want to challenge you to remember this method of studying your Bible. Look at the context of the passages that you're reading. Consider the author, consider the main characters, consider the times and the culture of that day, and consider whatever the conflict is. What is the conflict? What's the problem going on in that story? How would you have addressed it? What could it relate to today? And what is the counsel you can take from these stories that we read in the Bible about Jesus and his interaction with these women who had no name, and yet we're still reading about them. So they're famous 2,000 years plus later. But either way, take the Lord's counsel. And I pray and I hope that you will continue to tune in with me on Tuesday nights through the springtime, through May. And also, don't forget, share with everyone you know. We have our midweek service tomorrow, dcicc.net. And then, of course, Sunday is our campus ministry, our college ministry takeover. I hope that you will tell everyone you know about it. It's going to be so fun. We already saw the order of service. It looks like fire. Awesome. Super awesome. But thank you, ladies, so much for joining. I really appreciate your time that you spend with me every Tuesday. I love you so much. Talk to you later. Woohoo, Elizabeth. Let's see if I missed anything. Yep. Oh, thank you, Kia. I wanted to wear blue because I saw Davine's blue picture with her family on Facebook. Welcome. Love you, ladies. I have less than a minute. Thank you, Denise. Denise, we have to reconnect. Love you too, T. Okay, I guess we're going to sign off. Thank you, Grace. You guys are awesome. Okay, love you very much. See you tomorrow and Sunday and next Tuesday. Bye.